To our, what is this about, our fourth or our fifth Joint Protection Committee meeting. So thank you all for coming tonight. Just a reminder, this meeting will be recorded. And we are asking everybody to please hold your questions. If you want, you can put them in the chat as we're going along, but please hold your questions until the end of the night. And anybody who's got a PowerPoint presentation this evening that will be giving it, you will be allowed to share your screen, and then you will be responsible for advancing and manipulating your PowerPoint. So we are not, in the interest of time, we are not going to introduce everybody who is on this meeting tonight, with the exception of Sarah Schaefer Brown and Elizabeth Hornstein for the Long Island Sound Study. Those of us on the east end of Long Island know Sarah and Elizabeth from their work with the Peconic Estuary Partnership, but they are now working with the Long Island Sound Study. So I will turn it over to Sarah and Elizabeth to briefly introduce themselves to this group.
Okay, thank you, everybody. So everybody can see my screen, right? All right. So good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for this opportunity for us to speak at the Joint Protection Committee today. My name is Sarah Schaefer Brown. Thanks, Pat, for the introduction. It's nice to see you. And also joining me today is my colleague, Elizabeth Hornstein. And we've recently started our positions with New York Sea Grant as the Long Island Sound Study Sustainable and Resilient Communities Extension Professionals for Nassau County and Suffolk County. And we are supporting the larger efforts of the Long Island Sound Study.
Sarah, you just muted yourself.
All right, I don't know how I did that. We are the National Estuary Program funded by the EPA to protect the Long Island Sound and its watershed. And just for some background, as I stated, we are working under New York Sea Grant, which is a joint program of Cornell University and the State University of New York and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, which focuses on New York's marine and Great Lakes resources. So we're working in Nassau and Suffolk County communities along the Long Island Sound to advance sustainability and resilience. And the goal is to strengthen the ability of social and ecological systems within the Long Island Sound communities to adapt and recover from the effects of disturbances, including those related to climate change. And the Long Island Sound Study has a CCMP, their management plan. There are 4 main themes: clean waters and healthy watersheds, thriving habitats and abundant wildlife, sustainable and resilient communities, and sound science and inclusive management. And Elizabeth and I are focused on the sustainable and resilient communities theme. And we're really focused on helping our local communities plan for and help adapt for the impacts of climate change. So as you can see on this slide, the Long Island Sound Study coastal watershed spans the coast of New York and Connecticut. And for this reason, Elizabeth and I are actually working with other Sea Grant staff in Westchester County and 2 staff at Connecticut Sea Grant to advance this regional goal. So with that, I will hand it off to Elizabeth to do the rest of the presentation.
Hi, good evening, everyone. So to support this sustainable and resilient communities goal, we are focused on the 5 priorities listed here: a coordinated regional response, trained community decision makers, infrastructure improvement planning, viability of government services, and facilitated implementation of projects. And to guide our work, Sarah, you can go to the next slide. The first thing we're undertaking is this needs assessment to understand the environmental threats Long Island Sound communities are facing, communities' current sustainability and resilience goals, and what support is needed to advance goals and projects. So we're currently reaching out to a wide range of stakeholders and are hoping to talk to as many people as possible, because what we learned from this needs assessment is going to guide our future work. So we're going to be sticking a Google form link in the chat and hope that you all will fill out our form and let us know if you'd like to have a follow-up discussion with us to talk about needs in your community. The other main tasks we're working on this year are developing a website with relevant tools and resources for Long Island Sound communities and supporting a compound flood risk assessment model that's being led by the U.S. Geological Service. In the future, we're going to be holding workshops and delivering training programs and facilitating increased coordination and project implementation. And again, what we learned through our needs assessment is going to guide this work. So we encourage you to fill out that Google form link and let us know your needs. You can also email us directly. We're going to put our contact information up here. And we also have contact information listed for our other Long Island Sound Study colleagues, Mary Arnold, who's the regional coordinator with New York State DEC Division of Water, and Vicki O'Neill, the Habitat Restoration and Stewardship Coordinator. And we just want to thank you guys and Eric and Pat and everyone for giving us a chance to introduce ourselves this evening.
Pat, you're muted right now.
Thank you very much, Sarah and Elizabeth. We appreciate your presentation and welcome to the Long Island Sound Study. So I understand this Assemblyman Engelbright is at his desk and able to give his presentation. So we will go to Assemblyman Engelbright. And thank you very much for being here this evening with us.
It's a pleasure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, excellent. So thank you all for inviting me. I have a chance to talk a little bit about some of the advances that we've made in the first half of our session. We are into the second half now. This is sort of like a basketball game. It has two halves. The first half is the budget. That's something we try to target completion by April 1st. The second half is for more policy-oriented initiatives per se. They overlap a little bit, but they're distinct. The budget part is what I think I would like to spend the few minutes I have here focusing on. We have some really good news that came out of our budget process in the state of New York this year. This includes adding to the previously proposed Environmental Bond Act. You may recall that COVID caused it to be set aside about a year ago at the level of $3 billion. It was not brought before the voters because of the COVID-19 related problems. But this year, Governor Hochul, I believe wisely, added $1.2 billion additional dollars. We negotiated for that successfully and have a proposal going before the voters this November, which is really significant. At $4.2 billion, it is a landmark and a real opportunity to invest into all of the initiatives that we need to take to protect our waters and our lands and our air. So it's going to be called the Clean Water, Clean Air, and Green Jobs Environmental Bond Act. I think you should all be aware that when the voters take this up this year, it will provide an opportunity to have funding for safe water to drink and water infrastructure to restore critical habitats, reduce flood risks, and preserve important outdoor spaces, including farms and watersheds. The Bond Act will also support a substantial investment in the Clean Green Schools initiative that will reach every public school that is located in a disadvantaged community. In addition to the Clean Water, Clean Air, Green Jobs Environmental Bond Act, the budget this year has an additional $100 million. We've been funding for the last half decade at about the $300 million level. With this budget, that was increased to $400 million for the Environmental Protection Fund that supports climate change mitigation and adaptation and improving agricultural resources, and again, to protect our water resources. In addition to that, we have built into the budget this year $500 million in clean water infrastructure funding. That's something that I've been involved with for a number of years, and each year we have added to what was a truly staggering need. We have a need that we estimate to be about $80 billion, but you make journeys one step at a time. And this year's $500 million in clean water infrastructure funding brings the state's total clean water investment over these last few years since actually since 2017 to $4.5 billion. So I think that's all good news, and we are in the process also of really recognizing for the first time in about 46 or 7 years the importance of freshwater wetlands. And we have for the first time in that number of years, because the Freshwater Wetlands Act in New York was first passed in 1975 and hasn't been really modified since then. There was a need, obviously, to protect wetlands that were not protected by the 1975 language of that bill. But we made big strides this year. We are informed by Sierra Club, Roger Downs and Sierra Club, the statewide conservation director, estimates that the improvements made this year to the Freshwater Wetlands Act in New York will save perhaps something on the order of about 1.3 million acres of freshwater wetlands. And I'll tell you why that's important. Freshwater wetlands are nature's most efficient mechanism for removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. In fact, a lot of the excess carbon dioxide that we have in the atmosphere is from burning ancient freshwater wetlands. We call that coal. Yes, that's what coal is. It's an ancient freshwater wetland sedimentary rock. So we've been doing the worst of all things, which is burning ancient freshwater wetlands and destroying modern ones. We're going to try to stop the destruction of the modern ones. It brings us back to the Bond Act. Part of the money in the Bond Act will be to buy freshwater wetlands specifically. So there's a summary. Thank you for the chance to share this update on our budget process with you.
Thank you very much. We very much appreciate you taking the time this evening to be with us. So the next item in our agenda is we're going to go through a speed round, and we're going to be talking about the biggest issue for each protection committee. So we're going to start from the west and move our way east. So Sarah, you're up.
Okay, I'm Sarah Dionarine, Executive Director of the Manhasset Bay Protection Committee. And at the risk of sounding like Captain Obvious, our biggest issue is water quality. And also in the messaging to the general public about this is Manhasset Bay and this is your role in protecting and restoring water quality. But we're starting a new water quality improvement planning process, and we're going to have a lot of public outreach, and hopefully through that we'll get a lot of public input and then also buy-in to support the projects, and also to take the initiative to help out.
Thank you. Okay, so next is Hempstead Harbor, and Eric, we'll let you talk about that a bit.
I'm going to defer to Carol DiPaolo. She's basically, we both have the same issue, so rather than repeat it twice, Carol's going to cover it.
Awesome.
Okay, so our major issue is bacterial loading to Hempstead Harbor. And very specifically, we've been focusing on what we call the Powerhouse Drain Subwatershed, which is a longshore road at the bottom of Glenwood Road and Glenwood Landing. And This is a very hilly area, high water table. None of the area is sewered, all septic. And there was created in 2013 a Glenwood Road Powerhouse Drain Abatement Plan prepared to address the issues of the bacteria loading here, which was identified as one of the two major contributors of bacteria. It's now number one because of the restoration of Scudder's Pond, which had taken the lead previously. So what's been happening more recently is that, well, not so recently, we started testing in 2013 in anticipation of being able to implement the recommendations of the plan. This was through our core season and winter water monitoring program for Hempstead Harbor. In 2018, the coalition began an initiative for habitat restoration, project involving homeowners in the Glenwood Landing area specifically, to plant native shrubs and plants, to improve soil conditions, reduce nitrogen and reduce stormwater runoff. In spring of 2019, Town of Oyster Bay installed 37 nitrogen and bacteria reducing storm drain inserts into this sub-watershed. We were hoping to see some reduction in the bacterial loading, but that didn't happen. Could have been for a number of reasons, maybe not enough considering the area covered. In 2021, Hempstead Harbor Protection Committee and the coalition consulted with Fabco Industries regarding potential stormwater filtration systems that might be suitable for addressing the bacteria discharges at the Powerhouse Drain. In trying to figure out whether that made sense, we did some side-by-side testing with Fabco, and also had Fabco try to put those samples through the filtration media. We weren't sure at the end of that whether it was going to be effective. So what had happened then was, in responding to, actually at the end of 2021, there were exceedingly high bacteria levels from the Powerhouse Drain, and we began to collaborate with Nassau County DPW, Town of Oyster Bay DPW, environmental resources in Tow Bay, to try to track the sources and really begin strategically to look at some of the areas upland of the outfall, and began testing manholes one by one, storm drains, and also a creek that runs between Kassam and Glenwood Road.
Carol, I'm
Further,
sorry,
that
we have
testing
to ask
stopped
you-
in
We have to ask you to
April.
wrap it up.
Yeah, I am wrapping it up.
Okay,
It ended up with a final initiative to where the Hempstead Harbor Protection Committee contracted with drone vendor to do infrared photography to help still target the source of the bacteria. We're waiting for the final report.
okay, thank you.
You're
Okay,
welcome.
so next is Rob Craffa from Oyster Bay Cold Spring Harbor. Rob, you're muted.
All right, here we go. Speed round. I know we're supposed to give one issue. I got three. I'll do it in 30 seconds. First one is MS4. I can't believe I'm the only one that said MS4. I'm the third one into this. But judging by the previous mayor who told me be concerned about what you can get fined with. So MS4 seems to be the most important thing to us. As written right now, would really, really be an unreasonable burden on the municipalities. Second issue is water quality. Our two issues are identifying the sources of pollution. We've got one area in Cold Spring Harbor. We've got a storm drain that's been a hot spot, and the recent testing with microbial source tracking has come up 4 for 4 with human waste. So we got to figure out where that human waste is coming from and find a solution. In Millneck Creek, we have a similar issue with pathogens, we believe coming from probably some of the commercial development and residential. I'm proud to say the Bayville residents are leading the charge on getting those grants for on-site systems to improve them. and we're trying to use some infrastructure funds to connect that commercial district to the Glen Cove sewer treatment plant. And my third issue, and this is where I'll wrap it up, Pat, is on engaging residents on these issues. And what we'll do, and talk about it later, is how awesome oysters are at getting people excited and getting them involved in these issues. And those are my 3 quickies.
Thank you, Rob. Okay, George Hoffman from the Setauket Harbor Task Force.
Good evening, everyone, and I'll be really quick as well. We've been an organization now. We're going into our 7th year. We're basically a not-for-profit organization that works for clean water and harbor sustainability in both Setauket harbors and now Port Jeff Harbor. This is the 5th year that we've been a participant now in the Unified Water Study as in partnership with Save the Sound. That's really been an important project for us, and we've really built some really interesting data coming out of Port Jeff Harbor. It's our 2nd year for doing kelp harvesting and growing in partnership with Lazy Point Farms and the Moore Foundation. We found out Setauket Harbor, because of all its nitrogen, is actually a really great place to grow kelp. Last year we had over 200 pounds. This year we think we'll probably do 400 to 600 pounds, and we have all kinds of interesting ways to use the kelp. I think it's really an exciting program, and a lot of our residents really like it. And then third is we were successful in getting a $1 million grant from the state Senate about 3 or 4 years ago. It finally went into redeveloping or reconstructing all the stormwater that goes into Setauket Harbor through the 25A conduit and everything. So we're working. We like working with you guys, and we look forward to working in collaboration going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, George. Okay, so out here in the Peconics, Rob, I agree with you. The MS4 permit was and is a top issue. We'll be waiting to see and looking very closely how the permit is revised when it comes out, because as it was written, it would have been impossibly expensive to implement. So that is a top concern for us. Out here on the East End, we're seeing a significant increase in bulkheading, which has a very negative impact on wetlands. And so that's an issue that we're trying to figure out how to deal with. A lot of it is there's codes, there's all things that should be preventing bulkheads, but they're not. They're increasing dramatically, and it's a real issue. Another issue that we have out here is a loss of seagrass beds. Seagrass beds are vital for the scallop industry out here, because that's where the scallops develop, as well as other marine creatures. And the loss of seagrass could be caused by, there's many different possibilities, probably climate change, or could be possibly changes in salinity. So those are issues that we're looking at here. And of course, nitrogen pathogens and all the other fun things that we have to deal with. But we're not alone in that. And that's one of the big values of having all these multiple protection committees, because we all work with each other and support each other with all these different issues and problems. So with that, Rob Kraft mentioned oysters, one of my very favorite things. So we're going to go to Rob, and he's going to talk about his oyster gardens. Rob, you there?
I've got 2 mute buttons going. Anyway, here we go. That's how hard it is to get me to shut up. Don't laugh at that, Pat. Sorry. But I'm really excited to talk about oyster gardens all across Long Island. We've been doing the program. I think we're going to our 6th year in Oyster Bay and Cold Spring Harbor. What I'm really most excited about is it's really seeming to be taking off just to our west in Hempstead Harbor. I believe Carol and her great crew are working on doing some oyster gardening there. To our east in Hempstead Harbor, Huntington Harbor, excuse me. They're also Cornell Crop Extension is looking to do some oyster gardening. And then there's many sites in Port Jefferson, probably the Peconics with the SPAT program and others. And there are many, many, many on the South Shore of Long Island. But what the best part I think this is, of the 30 years I've been doing beach cleanup, storm drain stenciling, and everything else, I've never seen a program where residents get more excited over such a simple animal, to pay good money, to use their own effort, to raise an animal that they don't even get to eat. And at the end of the program that runs from June to September, they put the 1,000 oysters that they raised into a spawner sanctuary. And so this is the really amazing opportunity for people to get their feet wet, their hands muddy, and really take an active role in protecting their environment. Because as we know, oysters filter 50 gallons of water a day, up to 50 gallons of water, they say, can aid in shoreline protection, but can really improve habitat. And in the brief monitoring that we've done with a spawner sanctuary, we can see the diversity of life really coming back, and we hope to see more and more natural recruitment of oysters in that spawner sanctuary. So not only do we have a great engagement project, but we do have an environmental restoration at the same time. So with that, I promise I'd be brief. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to take them now, or they can shoot me an email. My email address is pretty long, but pretty simple. It's just rob@oysterbay.coldspringharbor.org. And I'd love to talk oysters and oyster gardening with you anytime.
Okay, thank you very much, Rob. Hope to get up there to sample your oysters soon. Next up is Dr. Aaron Freeman from Adelphi University, who'll be talking about sugar kelp.
Hi, folks. Aaron Freeman, Adelphi University. I've been talking about kelp to anyone who would listen to for the last 3 years, so it's great to be here. The kelp can grow up to 2 meters in length, and it grows during the season from November through late spring, early summer. And this past year, Oyster Bay, town of Oyster Bay, and the town of Hempstead have taken on the project to grow kelp in marinas and in open water sites. And Oyster Bay did 2 marinas, the Tappan Marina and the Theodore Roosevelt Marina, as well as 3 or 4 open water sites, 3 in the Long Island Sound. The kelp seems to have grown better in the marinas, which is confusing because the water flow is not so good, but it grew to about 1 meter in length in the marinas and less than 0.5 meter in length in the open water sites. So the open water sites don't seem to be growing as well for whatever reason. So that was harvested in the middle of April, early April. And the purpose is that these marinas are not being used during the winter, which is the growing season for the kelp. But in places like Port Jeff, where they potentially have a longer growing season, they can grow it out till June or so. They could easily see 2 meter in length kelp. So it's much more biomass and nitrogen removed from the systems. So I'm looking forward to seeing, how it develops in the next month or so at these other sites. And George and Stephen Koester, who are on the call, I've been keeping track and promoting those projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for keeping it on time. So next up is Steve Koester from the town of Oyster Bay about the shellfish hatchery expansion at the town.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Stephen Koester from town of Oyster Bay Shellfish Hatchery. Over the past few years, the town of Oyster Bay has been expanding aquaculture operations. In 2019, we were only producing between 2 to 3 million shellfish. This past year, we produced approximately 10 million clams, 2 million oysters, and this coming year, we hope to produce 20 million shellfish, which are all planted into areas for environmental conservation and restoration. As far as expansion of our hatchery, in addition to adding more tanks, we've also created an option to run a closed system with circulating heated water in our indoor upweller, downweller tanks. These tanks typically run with constantly flowing ambient bay water. And our new additions to the system allow us to heat the water in separate conditioning tanks and then transfer them into this closed system, which holds the shellfish, circulates the heated water as a downweller, and we aerate it by using our homemade air lifters. We also grew 4 different species of algae during the months when the ambient water was too cold to naturally produce those species, which are beneficial for shellfish growth. By adding this algae to our closed system, we were able to provide food for the animals because with the increased temperature, the shellfish increase their feeding behaviors and therefore increase growth. So by heating the water, adding the food, aerating the tanks, we were able to hold and grow shellfish earlier in the year than ever before. We intend to expand on these methods to a larger extent, as well as incorporate other sustainable aquaculture techniques to further expand our production capabilities and create a new, larger building for our aquaculture operations within the next few years. And that's really exciting. So thank you all for listening to that update, and hope to hear from you soon.
Thank you. So next is a shellfish seeding grant in Hempstead Harbor, and Carol DiPaolo will be speaking about that.
And actually, it's a shellfish seeding project that was proposed by Congressman Swazi for North Shore Bays, not just for Hempstead Harbor. And the grant was part of the community's grants program. $300,000 was approved in March. There was a press event April 21st. And at this point, we're waiting to find out from EPA Region 2 how the grant funds are going to be administered. Once that's found out, then approximately 10 million clams could be purchased with that 300,000. And following the guidance that will be given to us, we'll be figuring out, along with DEC, which bays that the seeds will be placed in. And also the timing is an issue at this point. We're hoping for this fall, but it looks like too late in the season by the time we get the guidance. So we're hanging on, just waiting to find out when this money will finally come through and we can make concrete plans for the seeding.
Thank you very much. Okay,
You're welcome.
next we're going on to a topic of great interest, the Beacon Wind construction project, when Sarah DeHonorine is going to be speaking about that.
Yep. All right, can you all see the presentation?
Not yet.
Nope, not yet. Okay. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Now you should be able to see it. Okay.
Got
Well, I have to give a quick presentation about a very big project. It is a Beacon Wind. It's a proposed wind farm being built in the Atlantic Ocean. It's being built by Equinor. And Equinor has had 2 meetings so far with stakeholders around Long Island Sound, because the cable will travel the entire length of Long Island Sound. So in the bottom right, I don't know if you can see my arrow, but to the bottom right is the proposed lease area, or well, it is the lease area. They've already got the lease. And then a cable is going to run northwest up to the Sound, through the race, all the way through Long Island Sound and into a substation in Astoria, Queens. They looked at a couple different locations for a substation, but chose Astoria, Queens for various reasons, including there's already disturbed commercial sites they could use, and there's the infrastructure there to accept this large amount of energy, and also it would bring clean energy into disadvantaged communities. So a quick rundown is that area is 128,000 acres. At full build out, the potential capacity is 2 gigawatts. First power is expected in 2028 at obviously a much smaller wattage. We talked about the Astoria substation. For the wind farm, they're planning to have their operations and maintenance based in South Brooklyn, but construction base will be in New England. So they're not expecting any disturbance to Long Island Sound other than burying the cable. Construction is anticipated to begin in 2025. They're applying for permits this year, and my computer's starting to go. It's all going to be in all federal or New York State waters. The New York segment is 105 nautical miles. They are not crossing into the Connecticut part of the Sound. They're expecting it'll take about 3 months to bury the cable in Long Island Sound and the East River. We don't have to worry about dielectric fluid leaking because they've moved away from that. And before my monitor dies, the public comment period is likely in the fall, and you can find more information at beaconwind.com. And where it goes.
Terrific. Thank you very much, Carol. Next, we're going to be talking about innovative and alternative septic systems. Sorry, double said that. First up will be Ken Ziegel, who will be talking about the work in Suffolk County.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me. So I'm going to be short and sweet for now because I have a little bit of a presentation to give on the subwatershed's wastewater plan that's linked to this. But yeah, it's been a historic couple years in terms of our advancements towards innovative alternative systems. In July of 2020, we released the subwatershed's wastewater plan, which is our countywide roadmap on how to upgrade the 380,000 on-site systems. I'd say our biggest challenge right now is now that we have a roadmap, we need to figure out the administrative structure and a funding source to actually implement the roadmap. So the roadmap calls for those upgrades over a 30-year period. Paramount to it is making those upgrades affordable to the homeowners of Suffolk County and the residents of Suffolk County. So I know Deputy County Executive Peter Scully and his group, along with planning and other stakeholders, have been working hard on working with state elected officials, local town and village officials to come up with the best approach to that. Again, I'll talk about that in a little bit, but I'd say that's our biggest challenge. And they've been pushing hard. They're hoping to get a ballot on the referendum. At this point, it looks like it'll probably be in 2023, but get a ballot on the referendum to let the public vote on whether or not they want to create a countywide wastewater management district, which would give us that administrative structure, as well as a stable recurring revenue source that would provide the funding stream to implement the plan.
Okay, thank you very much. And Eric is going to be talking about this grant program in Nassau County.
Okay, I just want to share my screen for a second here and bring up a diagram. Nassau County has a similar program to Suffolk's, only on a much smaller scale. I mean, while most of Suffolk County is unsewered, 90% of Nassau County is sewered, but of the 10% that is not sewered, that is basically most of the North Shore, which you'll see here. This map shows different things. The cross-hatching shows where there are small sewer districts. And then the different colors are basically showing where nitrogen loading is the greatest. That's taken from a modeling that was done by the Nature Conservancy. So in the total of the North Shore of Nassau County, there are 37,000 homes that are still on septic programs. And if you think about it, I mean, the whole purpose for having a sewer system is to protect the local water bodies. And with half the water bodies on the North Shore, even though 90% of the county is sewered, half of the water bodies are really not protected. After several years of delay, Nassau County decided to ask the Nassau County Soil and Water Conservation District to administer the grant program. And the program was rolled out exactly a year ago, just in May. The initial funding of $2 million from the New York State Environmental Facilities Corp allowed for up to $10,000 per site for 200 installations. When Nassau County last year received federal stimulus funds, they decided to appropriate an equal amount towards this program. So now that applicants, which are homeowners, small businesses, and not-for-profits that meet certain requirements, can receive up to $20,000 for a grant to install them. And since these systems are running $25,000, that's basically covers most of the cost. Out of those 200 potential sites, we have 195 applications right now. That not all of them have proceeded to contract stage, so there may be some that drop off. So we still have some room for others that are interested. In terms of administration, the district decided early on to try to streamline the process, the application process. Everything is now online. The two sources of funding are both covered by a single grant. And the digitized system really helps avoid any kind of lost paperwork and allows us to really track the program better. While the district administers the program, the county must still license installers, maintain and update the website portal, submit vouchers to the Environmental Facilities Corp, and pay out the grants following installation. To ensure that this happens smoothly, the district holds weekly progress meetings with the county. The district has also held several Zoom meetings with local villages and towns that must issue the permits. In fact, there was one tonight in the village of Center Island. and has turned many skeptical and confused municipalities into supporters and promoters. The district is also fortunate to have the Nature Conservancy and the North Shore Land Alliance assisting us with publicizing the program with press releases, direct mailings, and last year an outdoor vendor show where the public and elected officials could come see firsthand the systems and talk to the representatives. Finally, the district is hopeful that they will receive additional funds this year and from both Environmental Facilities Corp and the county in order to continue this program. That's my presentation.
Thank you very much, Eric. Okay, so now we're going back to Ken Siegel again, who's going to be talking about the progress made in the Suffolk County Subwatershed Plan.
Thank you, and welcome again. Let me just get this
Thank you again.
presentation back up here. And I just gotta figure out how to hide this so I can actually start my slideshow. All right. All right. So everybody can see my screen okay?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Excellent. Similar to Nassau County, Suffolk County, we published for those that aren't familiar with this study, the Subwatersheds Wastewater Plan, again, in July of 2020. Again, the goal of this was to establish basically a wastewater infrastructure plan roadmap, and how to upgrade 380,000 systems in Suffolk County, roughly, contrary to Nassau County, Suffolk County, it's roughly 75% unsewered. We elected to complete a generic environmental impact statement for the recommendations of the study for two reasons. One, to have a transparent public process to get comments from the public on the study itself, but also to streamline future seeker requirements for the recommendations in a plan. The findings were unanimously approved by the legislature in March of 2020. And then one of the findings that I'd like to share with everyone that was found by the legislature and the Council on Environmental Quality was that nitrogen from on-site wastewater sources represents the single greatest factor that we can manage to restore and protect the waters from the impacts of nutrient enrichment related water quality degradation. And similar to some of the graphics that Eric was just showing, we parsed the county down to 190 individual water bodies that we evaluated. For each water body, we generated the groundwater contributing area using modeling completed by our consultant, estimated the nitrogen loads to those contributing areas. In this case, Northport Harbor is 76% of the watershed nitrogen is coming from on-site wastewater systems, as well as generated load reduction goals for all the water bodies to improve water quality for various endpoints. One of the biggest things that we also did with the study was to prioritize and rank the water bodies in terms of current water quality and vulnerability to nitrogen related impacts and nitrogen loads. So we took the 190 water bodies, basically ranked them from 1 being the poorest water quality and highest vulnerability to nitrogen, and 190 being the best water quality. We took those water quality rankings and turned them into priority areas for implementing, again, a 30-45-year program to upgrade these wastewater systems, focusing on the highest priority areas first. The end result of it was this 30 and 45-year program, where the areas on this particular map here in purple represent phase 2, which is the primary program phase of the project, focused on those highest priority areas, 172,000 upgrades over 30 years. This study assumes that this starts in the year 2024. And then once we get through those highest priority upgrades, we go to our secondary priorities over another 15-year period. During the interim, between now and 2024, we call what we call program ramp up. And that's really to get our chess pieces in place to prepare for phase 2 and take care of low-hanging fruit, things that we know that we can take care of right now. So I'll talk about some of those program ramp up aspects in a minute here on some of the upcoming slides. So SWP advancements, these are things that we have been able to do while we kind of ramp up here. One is we now require the use of innovative alternative systems for all new construction and major reconstruction in Suffolk County. This was effective July 1st, 2021. Actually, I have a typo there. We also increased the allowable flow and reduced setbacks for what we call Appendix A systems. These are systems that get down to less than 10 milligrams per liter of nitrogen. They're small prepackaged SGPs. We wanted to make their use more flexible for use in Suffolk County. And probably, as I mentioned before, our biggest challenge and the biggest next step for us to actually implement this plan. It's nice to have a roadmap of how to replace these on-site sanitary systems, but is to establish what we're referring to as a countywide wastewater management district to give us the administrative structure to manage this entire program, as well as provide a mechanism to receive a funding source for implementation of the wastewater upgrades in the plan and make them affordable to the county. Deputy County Executive Peter Scully is also advancing all of the SCREE sewer projects. This was over $400 million in federal funds that were received post Sandy for sewer expansion areas where that made sense. And there's a whole host of other things that we've been doing to advance the subwatershed wastewater plan that I'm not going to dive into right now. Anybody has any questions? Anybody's always welcome to pick up the phone or email me at any time. Real quick summary of just the IA performance in Suffolk County. So as we look through the history of installations in Suffolk County, we can see that the actual effluent concentration and the performance of the systems just keeps increasing. Our target is 19 milligrams per liter, similar to Nassau. We're down at roughly 15.7 milligrams per liter. We have 7 technologies that are approved for what we call provisional use approval. And then we just recently approved 2 technologies for what we call general use approval. It's the highest accolade in our sanitary code for approval in Suffolk County. And as we can look at this graphic, 2 of these systems that receive general use approval are actually getting effluent concentrations similar to a sewage treatment plant, similar to close to 10 milligrams per liter. Okay, so just have a couple of slides to wrap up here on the countywide district, kind of purpose and need, as well as a stable recurring revenue source. So again, purpose and need, the district itself would create an overarching operating structure for maintaining O&M oversight and contracts related to the 380 size innovative alternative systems, as well as grant administration for providing homeowners with grants to install these systems. It also provides an opportunity, once we do have a stable recurring revenue source, to leverage federal infrastructure funds that are out there that require matching funds. It's going to help us levelize sewer rates. We have, I think, 20-something individual sewer districts in the county, all with different sewer rates all over the map. So it would help us make those level for all residents of Suffolk County. We have if you're not familiar with it, but in our septic improvement program, similar to the septic program in Nassau County, we've been issuing 1099s. The county comptroller has been issuing 1099s to homeowners, which has been a problem. So this would resolve that taxability status issue. So there's a lot of benefits to creating the countywide wastewater management district. It's a critical element to the overall implementation of the plan. We found out this year that the draft budget for the state's operating budget under the governor's budget provided draft language authorizing legislation for the county to implement the recommendations of the subwatershed wastewater plan and allow for a referendum to let the voters decide if they wanted the countywide wastewater management district and or the water quality restoration fund, if it should be established on a November ballot. This was strongly supported, by organized, not only environmentalists and all of us here, but organized labor, building trades, and the like. Unfortunately, at the last, I think relatively close to the last minute, the language of the Water Quality Restoration Act was taken out of the operating budget, but they're still working to continue to pursue that, to fine tune language on it. And at least the last that I saw was that they were hoping to get it on the referendum now for November 2023. And just real quick reference for what we were looking at in terms of a model for the stable and recurring revenue source. We were looking at modeling after the Bay Restoration Fund down in Chesapeake Bay. That's been very, very successful. It's a $5 per month charge for all residential parcels in the county. It would generate, it's $60 a year, would generate $42.2 million, which would enable us to implement the subwatershed to the wastewater plan. And again, would also help us leverage federal funds for meeting that match requirement as well. And that is all I have.
Thank you so much, Ken. Every time I hear you speak, I learn at least 3 new things, and I just continue to be so impressed with how well laid out and thought out this plan was. So thank you very much for your presentation. Dan Fucci was going to be speaking to us tonight about the Nassau 9-element plan update. Unfortunately, he was not able to be with us, but Eric Swenson will be stepping in and talking about that instead.
This is going to be about the shortest presentation you've ever heard. All I can say is, well, the Nassau County is working on what they're calling a 9-element plan. It's basically the Nassau County's equivalent to the Suffolk County subwatershed plan. It's also being worked on through Stony Brook University and Dr. Gobler and DEC. And there is a steering committee of different organizations, including our protection committees. But the latest is that in April, the county met with Stony Brook people and with DEC and hammered out, and they hope to hammer out a draft plan by the beginning of June, which will be sent to the stakeholders review group for a quick turnaround, and they hope to have a final plan by early July. And that's about all I know.
You can't make anything up? Come on, Eric. Okay, well, you are also going to be talking now about the draft new permits. So
yes, let me share my
take it away,
screen.
Eric.
Hold on a second here. And let me get this. And let me go here. Where do I start the presentation? Hold on a second here. New slide.
Slideshow.
Slideshow. There we go. Okay, play from the start. Okay, I'm very glad that this is virtual, because that way you can't shoot the messenger.
Yes, we can.
Okay. So I'm going to give you a very brief overview of the proposed new MS4 permit. Summarizing a 160-page permit in 10 minutes equates to covering 16 pages a minute. So I'll be going pretty quickly through this. For your information, those of us who organized this meeting tonight have reviewed these draft permit and have provided joint comments to the DEC, but we're uncertain at this point what, if anything, will change from what is being presented here tonight. DEC is reviewing quite a few comments that they've received and has not given an indication, as far as I know, as to when the final permit will be issued. Let me see how do I, okay. In order to understand why DEC has greatly changed what we're used to, it's necessary to know that the requirements evolved due to lawsuits initiated both against the DEC and the EPA by the NRDC and others seeking to require more accountability, more public input, and more enforcement of stormwater permits. The result is a much more extensive and prescriptive permit with much less latitude given to MS4s. MS4s are the municipal storm sewer system operators. The draft permit is more than 100 pages longer than any of our 5 neighboring states. The fact sheet alone is 47 pages long. It's proposed as a 5-year permit starting sometime this year. Whether this will happen remains to be seen. Many feel the DEC is under a lot of pressure to finally issue a new permit, given the fact that they signed a consent decree to settle the lawsuit years ago. From a 40,000-foot vantage point, here are some of the major takeaways. Many specific plans need to be prepared and updated annually. An annual report and an interim progress certifications are due twice a year. Mapping requirements are greatly expanded. There's many deadlines imposed. There's much more emphasis on illicit discharge detections and elimination. There's several new types of training required, and now all reports must be submitted electronically. A few overarching comments. One size does not fit all. This will be especially burdensome to small villages. It imposes liability on third parties like our protection committees when they assist those who violate their permits. And it can be costly. The town of Patterson, located in Putnam County with a population of 12,000, did a pretty detailed analysis for a 5-year cost and showed it would cost $1.4 million. So get ready for your head to spin and your budget to increase. We and others have suggested that the new permits implementation be delayed for a year. That would allow MS4s the time to review and adjust budgets and staff. There are 10 new plans and programs required to be developed, implemented by specific dates, and all activities documented and annually updated and subject to public comments. I won't read these, but I'll give you a few seconds just to give a quick look over. Similarly, mapping requirements have been expanded. While DEC wants these to be in GIS, there are provisions for using traditional hard copies in certain situations. There are also inventories required with deadlines to do so. Some MS4s literally have thousands of catch basins alone to inventory. And the draft permit also details 9 types of training requirement. Some will be given by DEC authorized entities such as soil and water conservation districts, and some the MS4s must develop and give themselves. We've commented that DEC should develop and offer online training programs. There's also sampling and monitoring requirements with specific deadlines, frequencies, and reportings for outfalls, MS4 interconnections, municipal facilities, and illicit discharges. Now getting into the details, and I have to emphasize some of the details. The permits are organized into the following categories: stormwater management program, record keeping and reporting, minimum control measures, enhanced requirements for impaired waters, and watershed improvement requirements for TMDL implementation. With respect to the stormwater management program, each MS4 must designate a stormwater management program coordinator. As you'll see, there's so much here, I don't see how anybody could manage this program or carry out their permit without having somebody dedicated to it. That coordinator must receive 4 hours of training once during the permit term. Stormwater management plans must be updated annually by June 1st. A comprehensive map must be developed and updated annually, and enforcement response plan must be developed and implemented within 6 months, and enforcement must be tracked. Moving on to the minimum control measures in terms of public education, you need to identify and document focus areas, and also identify and document target audiences and associated pollutant generated activities for residents, commercial business owners, institutions, construction developers and designers, industrial owners and staff, and MS4 municipal staff. You must also identify education and outreach topics and show how those topics will reduce the potential for pollutants to be generated by each target audience. And for each target audience, at least one educational message is required during the 5-year period. In terms of public education and participation, there were not many changes to this. It's pretty much the same, but what is new is that the public must have an opportunity to review and comment on the stormwater management plan, which now needs to be updated annually. But this can be done in conjunction with the annual public comments on the draft annual report. Also, within 6 months, the municipality must identify a local point of contact to receive and respond to public concerns on stormwater management and compliance with permit conditions. With respect to illicit discharge detection and elimination, there's a lot to do. Within 6 months, you need to establish email address and phone with recording ability to report illicit discharges. And within 2 years, develop a monitoring locations, inspection and sampling program, illicit discharge trackdown program, and an illicit discharge elimination program. And there's very specific requirements under each of those. With respect to construction site runoff controls, you need to establish a similar reporting system, like with the illicit discharge detection, with recording ability, et cetera. And also develop a construction oversight program. Each of the sites must be prioritized and inspected. The frequency of inspection will depend on whether it's a high priority or low priority. Staff must be trained once per permit term, that's once every 5 years, and an annual update of construction oversight procedures is required. Moving on to post-construction stormwater management. Within 1 year, you need to develop a post-construction stormwater management plan, inspection and maintenance program. That includes inspections, follow-up actions, enforcement, training, et cetera. And within 5 years, complete an inventory of municipally owned stormwater management practices, which were installed after March 10th, 2003. So by the time this permit is done, you're going back over 20 years to do that inventory. And then you annually have to update and modify your post-construction inspection and maintenance procedures. With respect to pollution prevention and good housekeeping, within 5 years, there are a number of best management practices that must be undertaken and plans developed, implemented, and updated annually. The best management practices are very specific, and they fall into the following categories: preventative maintenance, spill prevention and response, erosion and sediment controls, vegetated areas and open space, storage of salt, waste, garbage, and floatable debris. And where you have contract out for municipal services, you need to have alternative implementation operations procedures. Also, you need to develop an inventory of municipal facilities, and they must be prioritized. Develop and implement a municipal facilities program, which includes training. Also, a municipal operations program for facilities and operations assessments and training, and develop a catch basin inspection program. Moving on to the requirements for enhanced requirements for impaired waters. This applies where you are listed on the 303 list of impaired waters and where there's no TMDL established. You'll recall that the DEC rescinded the 27 TMDLs, the TMDLs for 27 water bodies on Long Island for shellfish pathogens. So those water bodies now fall within this part of the permit for enhanced requirements. So under this, you need to do comprehensive mapping, and this has to be in GIS format as of the way they proposed it. A lot of small municipalities really don't have GIS capability, but they're going to have to pay for that, I assume. Ordinances and penalties are required regarding pathogens. You need to do a twice-a-year education campaign. There needs to be inspections for illicit discharges, twice-a-year street sweeping. But in the generosity of DEC, they've clarified that you do not need to sweep your street if it's a dirt road. Outfall inspections and repairs are required. Once you inspect them, if there's some damage, there's deadlines to repair those outfalls. Canada goose control measures with follow-up and documentation, and pet waste receptacles. In other words, where there are areas in your community where there are pet stores or veterinarians' offices, you need to install pet waste receptacles, even though the animals are mostly inside at those locations. Okay, then you've got Part 9, which applies to where there is a TMDL. I'm not sure if there are any water bodies on Long Island that have current TMDLs, but for those that formerly had the pathogen TMDLs, this section no longer applies. While DEC is drafting a new pathogen TMDL, it's likely that any MS4 permit requirements will not be applied during this permit period. So thank you for your time. Our protection committees will be keeping track of any developments and letting you know what's happening with this. I would be glad to share these slides with anyone who feels they may be helpful. But again, this is recorded, so you can always go back to this recording and see them. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Eric. That was a good summation. And, I can't say strongly enough how expensive and difficult this permit would have been to implement. So it is now time. We'll have open discussion and Q&As. If anybody wants to ask any questions or just talk about some of the things you've heard tonight, now's your time. Mayor DeVita, I see you have your hand up.
Hi, Pat. Thank you.
You're
I just have a
welcome.
question for Sarah regarding the Beacon Wind project. On that map, it looks like that cable, that underground cable it's got to be at least 150 miles long. Has there been any type of studies done to determine what, if any, environmental impact there'll be for that? Whether it's involved with having electrical cable run that long under the sound or underground in the sound, or the effects of what will be required to install that cable. And I'm assuming it's some kind of cut and cover. I don't know if anyone can missile for 100+ miles a cable like that. But do you know if there's been any studies and any conclusions?
So at the last meeting, I think they were still working on the environmental impact. That's why they kept reaching out to the environmental groups on the North Shore to try and help them identify what impacts there might be. Other than that, I don't really know. I'm hoping they'll post things on their website, beaconwind.com. Anybody else who was on those meetings can feel free to chime in.
Thank you.
But the other thing to note, for anybody that doesn't know, is that the area is already crisscrossed with a lot of buried cables and pipes in the Atlantic Ocean and across Long Island Sound.
Aaron, did you have your hand up for a minute, or was I mistaken in that?
I did not have my hand up.
Okay, I'm terribly sorry. I thought I saw one. All right, does anybody else have any comment they might want to make or statement?
Yes, Mary Arnold from DEC wasn't able to make it tonight, but she wanted me to, and I'll pass along the link so we can share it out. But DEC is hosting a webinar on their 2 DEC grants coming up. One is the water quality improvement projects, and the other is non-agricultural, non-point source planning grants. It will be next Tuesday, May 17th at 11 a.m. And I'll make sure I forward that to all the protection committees to share out.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so if there is nothing else from anyone else tonight, I'm sure it's going to break everybody's heart if we end up early, but looks like that's what we're going to do.
Pat,
Yes.
just one quick question. The
Okay.
cable coming in, is that cable protected, or is it lined, or is there any, it's a long cable and they're gonna have to have special conditions for it. Is it just a cable, or is it one of those cables that are inserted within another pipe and protecting it? And how deep will it be?
I can go back through my notes and look and see if I have that written down. It doesn't have fluid in it anymore. It's HDVM cable, which I don't know what that is exactly.
But it's one of the ones that broke coming into Hempstead Harbor.
No, I think this is a new type.
That had the fluid in it.
Yeah.
That one had fluid in it. I know, that's what leaked out. I'm talking about this one. Is it non-fluid? That's what I was concerned about. There's so much traffic underneath the ground there that they're going to be careful. But if it's not fluid, it really takes a big danger away.
Yeah, and they're looking, they're doing a lot of benthic mapping, looking for a corridor. They know they're going to have to cross other cables that have been put down. They seem like they're really crossing all their T's and dotting their I's.
Why didn't they come in from the Atlantic side instead of coming down the middle of the sound?
I don't know.
That doesn't make any sense to me at all.
No. No, it
It
doesn't.
looks like a much shorter distance through the Atlantic.
It's shorter in the Atlantic, it's safer in the Atlantic, there's less obstructions in the Atlantic. Let's think, let's use Long Island Sound. Brilliant.
We'll be sure to pass along any information they pass about a public meetings and public comment periods.
Thank you.
Ask that question.
Okay, well, if there is, yes,
Great meeting.
thank you very much. And I thank you all for coming and joining with us and doing this again next year. So we'll let you know and save the date. Thank
Thank
you.
everyone. Thank everyone for putting
Good
this
night, all.
together.
Thank you. Good night.
Welcome, and thank you.
Thank you. You and your family stay well.
Thank you.
As a newbie, I really must say I am deeply impressed, encouraged, and delighted to be part of this. It's really hands-on, good work. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you, everybody.
Be well.